Welcome back, y'all, and in this video we're going to be setting up local push notifications. So to get started, let's go ahead and jump into the storyboard, and we're going to create that layout item that we saw in this screenshot right here. We're going to create this little bar right here with this little schedule button so that we can start to send these push notifications. So it looks like we've got this little box right here with a bell, a little label, and then a button. So overall, this is going to be a pretty simple layout. The only thing that makes it a little bit tricky, and we're going to have to get a little bit clever with the UI, is that we have to pay attention to this safe area down here and make sure that we're not getting anything above that. So to do that, let me go ahead and close that. What we're going to do is we're going to create two views here. And interestingly enough, they're not going to be a parent and child view. They're actually going to both be on the same level. So let's go ahead and search for UI view right here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's go ahead and create this first one. And what we're going to do is we're going to constrain this 0 from the left and right. And this is going to be 0 from the view, not the safe area. And this one's also going to be 0 from the view, not the safe area. And this one is also going to be 0 from the view, not the safe area. That way we make sure that we have one view that goes all the way through the view. And let's go ahead and add that. And right now it's going to complain because it's not going to know what its height or width is or anything like that. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and add one more view. And again, this is just going to be on top of that view, not a child of that view. So let's go ahead and move it down a little bit. Now that we have this, what we're going to do is we're going to constrain this also to the super view, not the safe area, left and right. And then what we're going to do is this part is going to be 0 from the safe area. So make sure that the first view that we did is all super view. And then this one is also super view, but that bottom constraint is going to go to the safe area. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and set a height of 80. And if we add these 4 constraints, we're getting close. But the last thing we need to do to get this view to appear properly is we need to control drag to this, and we're going to set them to have the same top constraint. Now we can see them starting to align real nicely. But for some reason, what we're seeing here is that these are not quite going all the way to the edge. So let's see, what's our problem here? Let's go ahead and click that trailing constraint, and let's make sure that we're on that super view. That's odd. It didn't really want to add it properly. So I don't know if you saw what I just did there, but I had to kind of delete the constraint and add it back. So I'm going to delete that leading constraint. Let's try this one more time. We're going to set it to the view, and we're going to set it to 0. Well, I guess as you see here, this is Xcode kind of being cantankerous again. So hopefully it's working for you, but on my end, I'm having to unset it and reset it to the super view to get it to actually connect all the way. So it looks like that one's connecting all the way almost. But the bottom, we're still having some issues with the bottom here. So let me fix these real quick. Okay, so it looks like, oh, well, no, one more real quick. Okay, so it looks like we're all good now. We're all squared away. So as you can see, Xcode can just be cantankerous sometimes. I'm hoping that this is just a little bug in this version, and hopefully you don't have that same problem. But for me, it wasn't wanting to actually constrain it to the super view for some reason. So I just had to unset it and reset it on all of those. But you can see how I did it in case that same sort of thing happens to you. Xcode is not a perfect tool. It's a pretty good one, but it's not perfect. And sometimes we have problems like that. So it is what it is. But now you can see the goal here was to have one view that's white that extends all the way down into the safe area. And then we have a better view that we can actually add stuff to that we're not worried about going into the safe area. And what this effectively does is on an iPhone 11 where we have this little safe area, we're not worried about whether or not the view is going to look correct. But if we switch over to a phone like the SE that doesn't have a safe area, we can see that we also are safely inside that margin right there, and we're not going to worry about whether or not it's flowing over or under or whatever. So that's just a fun little trick to get something on the bottom of the screen without worrying about, having a box that's going to go outside of bounds or whatnot. So this is going to be perfect for us. So now that we have that view right there, we're going to want to add this little view with the bell along with the label and the schedule button. So let's go ahead and create a UI view, another one. We're going to add it to the little safety box right here that we have. We're going to give it a height and width of 30. We're going to constrain it 20 from the left. And then we're going to want to center it vertically in the container. Now let's go ahead and give this a background color of gray. Oh, it looks like that's not really... it looks like I gave it a height of 39, not 30. There we go. That's looking correct now. Now that we have that on there, let's add an image view. And we're going to add that image view to that little box that we just created. And now that this is inside that box, let's pin it 7 from all the edges. And then if we come in here to the image, if you just start searching for bell, you'll see a little bell right here. And this is just something that's built in by Apple that we just get access to. There's a bunch of little unique system images that we can use. So we have that in there now. And let's go ahead and give it a tint of red so that it matches the button color right there. Cool. Now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and add our label right here. And let's constrain that. Let's go 10 from the left of or 10 from the right of that box. And then we're going to center this also vertically in the container. And this is going to say schedule notification 10 seconds from now. Is that what I said? Is that how I put it? Let's see. Let's take a look at it. Send notification in 10 seconds. Whoops. Send notification in 10 seconds. Now let's go ahead and drop the font size a little bit. There's no need for this to be so big. So let's give it a font size of, we'll say 13. That looks pretty good. And then let's add a button here to the right of that. This button is going to be 10. We're going to constrain it 10 from that label right there. And then we're going to do 20 from the right. Let's give this button a height of 30. And then we're also going to want to center this vertically inside the container. And then we're going to put send here. Now, one thing that we're going to want to do is make sure that with that little constraint that we just added, that's going to be 10 from the right of that label right there, instead of making it just 10, that's going to like fix it to 10. We just want it to be anything greater than 10. That way it can kind of, flex and grow as needed. And the reason for that is because we don't want the button to change size based on that. We want the label to change height as needed, but not the button. So to do that, let's go ahead and add a content insets right here. So if we give this a content inset of 20 from the left, you can see it starting to grow there on the left side. And then if we go 20 from the right, whoops, I went a little too far. Now we can see it starting to ellipses, and that's because this label doesn't actually know how to grow, and that's because we don't have the lines set to 0. So if we set the lines to 0, then we should be good to go here. But it looks like it's still complaining. It looks like it still doesn't like what I've got going on here. So you know what? Instead, let's go ahead and real quick, let's set this to 2. You know what? Let's just remove that text real quick. Now that we've got the label, the button the size that we want, let's go ahead and set the width to 80. I think that's what I was looking to do. And then with the label here, we can go ahead and add that text back. Send notification in 10 seconds. Sorry, that was just some weird UI debugging there. I just wanted to make sure I could get this to the right size. Okay, so now that we've got all of this set up, let's go ahead and set the text color to white. And we're going to set the background color to that system red. Let's go ahead and let's check this out. Okay, yeah, it was blue or bold. So let's go ahead and change the font size to bold. And we'll make the font size 13. It looks like it's about the same font size as the label there. Yeah, that's looking good. Okay, now this little view right here, we need to give a corner radius of 15. So, or sorry, not a corner radius of 15. Well, was it a circle or was it a square? Ah, it's a square. So let's give that a corner radius of 5. And let's give the button also a corner radius of 5. And if we run that, we should start to see our UI starting to take shape. And it looks like it's starting to show up there. It's looking good. So now we need to connect the button into the actual view controller. So let's go ahead and click our little button right here, and let's drag it in. Actually, you know what? I'm going to drag it up here at the top. Yep, and I'm going to say on send button tap. That's not what I wanted to do. It was supposed to be an action, but it looks like I didn't add an action. I accidentally added a actual constraint outlet, which is definitely not what I meant to do. So let's see here. Okay, I'm gonna click on that little constraint real quick, and I'm gonna delete that. That's not what I meant to do. And that's how you delete a constraint if you need to. So let's click on that send button again. Hopefully you didn't make the same mistake I did. I'm going to control drag one more time. There we go. There's the action that I'm looking for. On send button tap. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a function, and that function is going to be called send notification. And we're going to want to call that function whenever the button is tapped. And what I want to show you here is actually how to read a little bit of Apple documentation. So it's pretty common that you're going to have a question like, how do I send a notification? And it's important to know how to use the documentation available to you to figure out how to do these things. So I could just show you myself, but it would probably be more valuable to help you learn how to actually read Apple documentation, or any documentation for that matter. So if we come to Google and we type send local push notification iOS, one of the first things that pops up here is some developer.apple.com documentation. And if we come here, we're going to see that the first thing that we need to do is create the notifications content using this UN mutable notification content. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and say let content equal UN mutable notification content. And then the next thing it wants us to do is set the title and body. So if we say content.title equals, we're going to want to set that to quote. Nope, looks like Xcode's freezing on me a little bit. There we go. Quote.author. But this is an optional, and it looked like the title was not an optional. So we need to have a guard at the top. So we're going to say guard let quote equal quote else return, because if the quote is nil, then we don't have anything to do, so we can just return back out. So actually I'm going to open up the ViewController class so it's a little bit easier to look at. So yeah, we'll do a guard here. Now this isn't optional anymore, so we just say content.title equals quote.author, and then content.body equals quote.text. So now we have our content. That's the first step according to Apple. Now that we have that done, it says we need to specify the conditions for delivery. So this is where we need to decide when this notification is going to be triggered. Now, one thing that we could dig a little bit deeper into the trigger documentation for, but one thing that I can show you is, for this example, we don't actually need to send it on a calendar day. This is how you would do it if you wanted to do that. But in our case, we just want to send it 10 seconds from now. So we can actually make this even a little bit easier than this right here. And we can say let trigger equal, it's still going to be a UN calendar notification trigger. Or sorry, it will be a UN time interval notification trigger, not a calendar notification trigger. In this case, we're doing a UN time interval because we want it to be timed from now. So if we do that, we can say time interval is 10 for 10 seconds, and then it's not going to repeat. So right there, we're setting a trigger so that it gets sent 10 seconds from now without repeating. Now that we've got the trigger set, we need to create and register a notification request. So to do that, we need to create this UUID string. So let's say let UUID string equal UUID dot, what did it say there? Dot UUI, oh, sorry, we got to initialize it. Dot UUID string. And then we need to set up the request. So request equals in notification request. And then we need to pass in that identifier, which is that UUID string, as it says in the documentation. And then the content is going to be the content we created, and the trigger is going to be the trigger we created. So content is content, and trigger is trigger, those things that we just created. And then it looks like the last thing that we need to do is get the notification center and then add the request. So what we're going to do is let center equal UN notification. Whoops. What was it there? This is the user notification center dot current according to the documentation. And then we're going to say center dot add request, and we're going to pass in that request we just created. And we're not going to worry about a completion handler for now because we're just going to send it, and we don't need to know when it was done sending. So based on Apple's documentation, you saw me there. I literally just read what they told me to do, and we're going to test this out and see if this works. But before we do that, there's one last thing that we need to do to get this completely working, which is if you've ever used an application before and it has had push notifications, one thing that you need to do is ask the user for permission to send them push notifications. So to do that, let's do one more thing, and let's look up a little bit more documentation here. And let's look up request push notification permission Swift. And if we search that, we can click on this Apple documentation right here. And it says very simply that this is pretty much all that we need to do is just get the current user notification center and request authorization. And if we need to handle the error, we can do that here. Otherwise, we're welcome to do whatever we want inside this closure, depending on whatever their answer is. So I just copied that right there. We're going to go to the view did load right here. And whenever the view loads, we're going to get the notification center and we're going to request access. In this case, we don't really need to handle the error, and we don't really need to do anything regardless of what they say. Either it is going to work or it isn't going to work. I'm going to leave this code here though, in case you decide that you want to do something with this application, like show the user something if they click the button possibly, but they don't have access. You could do whatever you want. There's endless limits as to what you could do. In this particular case, we're going to assume that the user clicks yes, just so I can show you how it works, but you're welcome to add any additional logic that you want. So if I run the application, we're going to see that it immediately asks me for permission to send notifications. I'm going to go ahead and click allow. Then if I click the send button and then I exit the application, here in about 10 seconds, we should expect to see that notification come through. And it should be any second now. There we go. And there's the notification. So it says Napoleon Hill. The starting point of all achievement is desire. If we tap on the notification, it's going to bring us back into the application. So we've pretty much covered everything here. Again, this is kind of a blank canvas for you to take it as far as you want beyond this. If you want to add some little alert if they click the button or not allow them to click it, whatever it is that you want to do, feel free to continue working on it. The goal of this was to just get a basic understanding of how to use APIs and how to send local push notifications. We've covered both of those things. This was a lot to take in, but what I really encourage you to do after watching this is to read through all the code that we wrote. Make sure that you understand what's happening when we make that API request. Make sure you understand how we're decoding that stuff. Make sure that you kind of understand how to read the documentation and all that. Although this kind of was a lot to take in and a lot to learn, this isn't an overly complicated application. I mean, if we open it back up, we're only looking at about less than 100 lines of code in the ViewController itself, and then just a couple extra files. And I'm not trying to minimize what we wrote here. This was a big deal and this was significant, but it shouldn't be too difficult to consume if you reread through it. Which is what I would encourage you to do. If everything's making really good sense to you, great, we're on the right path. If not, we've talked about it before in the course. There's many different avenues that you have to get help if needed. But I would just encourage you to keep reading, keep writing, keep going down that path. And in the next modules, we're just going to keep picking back up on this same level. We're going to keep going even further. We're going to keep working with APIs, working with other types of requests and stuff like that. So at this point, you're ready to hear me stop talking. You're ready to jump into the next module. So congrats on getting this far, and let's get into the next one.